I think it's great. I mean, just because they didn't really think about the future in terms of like money, they just saw enjoyment and really
Yeah,
put that prioritize that above everything else.
sure. So, the title of the pod, it's never about money, right? So
Yeah, well,
you know,
exactly.
well, it's about happiness and enjoying what you're doing. And if you can monetize it, which we'll talk about a little later, that's
Yeah.
brilliant. In this episode, I'm joined by James Gatling, lead guitarist of successful Australian band WAAX. You might think, what does a musician have to do with the It's Never About Money podcast? There were so many insights and takeaways from this particular episode. I'm excited to share that we talked about developing a passion before we think about commercialisation and money. We talked about the commercialisation of the arts industry and how someone can build a scalable business, so to speak, in the arts. We talked about having a safe space to be able to create, to innovate, to brainstorm without judgment. When you think about it, who better to ask about how to set up and start a business than a musician who came into the industry without the notion of any financial security? In that respect, this is a really, really interesting conversation for all business owners to listen to. I hope you love it as much as I did. I'm joined by James Gatling, lead guitarist from WAAX, a band that's very popular and has done quite well on Triple J. And it's a bit of a different pod episode, James. We talked about this before, but I'm kind of excited to get you on because I think we'll have a cool conversation about music and passion and money and all the things that you're doing in your world. So how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation, to be honest, because one of my favorite things in the world is just to talk about the band. And I think all my friends, I've been chewing their ear off for too long about like things that we're doing. So this is great. It's given me a platform to talk about the band and music and stuff like that.
Great. Well, that's awesome because I'm pretty curious about, and I've got a bit of a musical background, nothing like yours, but I'm super excited to explore a little bit about your journey into becoming the lead guitarist of WAAX and how your journey basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think my journey was like just as mundane as pretty much everyone else's journey. You started. I guess my family was quite musical.
Okay.
My dad especially, piano. We had piano. I think the first thing I did was piano lessons, and we got paid 50 cents for like as an incentive to do your lessons, and I remember that. But then I, for some reason, didn't like the piano, even though now I wish I stuck with it. And then my brother Tom he got this guitar from an op shop. I think it was like $50. It was a pretty crappy guitar, and then he gave it to like the three youngest siblings in the family. And just ended up picking that up and just playing it endlessly, and then went into lessons and went through the classical guitar thing, and then somehow ended up playing rock music. I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was there any sense in the family that so music was encouraged clearly in the family, but was there ever any sense of this won't be a living for you, this is a bit of a challenge, should think about doing something else, or was it always, no, if you really love music you stick with it and you do what you do?
There was never any sort of ushering into sort of in inverted commas proper jobs or something like that. Always just an encouragement to sort of explore creativity and kind of just do what you want to do as long as it's not harmful. You know what I mean? Just like, just kind of explore yourself. Like, for example, my oldest brother, he makes games, and like he's become quite successful from making games. But when he first started that, you might not, he was encouraged to do that. My other brother does film, and like my sister Kitty does like sort of like drama and acting and stuff like that. So like, we're all just kind of encouraged to do whatever and follow what we want to do, and then work it out for ourselves whether we can sustain sustain a creative career or want to do something that's kind of more stable money wise.
Yeah. Was music innate to you as a young kid, or do you feel like you had to just work at it?
Um, I think it's hard to tell because I know I didn't know whether I had like an innate talent or anything like that, but I think I always had an innate passion. Because as soon as I started playing, I couldn't stop playing. And I remember it was so annoying. I was so annoying at a family holiday. We all went up north to a place called Agnes Waters, and my brother taught me this one guitar riff, this one thing, and it was like this song, and I can remember. I can still remember it. I played it so often that it was by like a Brisbane acoustic like folk artist called Lauren, and it was just this little guitar riff, and I just like learned it on the first day, and for the whole week was just playing it constantly, and they were like, they're like, shut up.
It reminds me of White Stripes, like it reminds me of White Stripes, like
yeah, or like Smoke on the Water. It was like that. They like it was like for me that was my learning thing, and I just played that and played that and played that, and it must have been so annoying. But I just obviously really wanted to play and get better, and I think that's in that regard, that sort of passion or that wants to do music led to sort of being able to actually do it and work hard at it.
Yeah.
So it's not always fun. It's not.
Yeah. No. It's interesting. Like you talk about your family. I mean, my family was quite, especially my dad was more of an academic sort of side, and I never really saw music as being some sort of a career option for me, even though innately I remember, picking up the sticks in music class and just tapping out a groove so easily and feeling like it was kind of innate and it was like in me.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of like had this kind of affinity for music, but I never sort of joined the dots, or I don't know if I was able to model and join the dots, even though like, I know on my mum's side, my granddad was like a drummer. And some of my uncles are in music and they sing and they, play instruments. So it's strange that, I couldn't make the connection. And so that's probably why I didn't, partly why I didn't go down that track, even though I did love it so much. So it's pretty interesting how I'm actually in kind of a little bit of awe, your family sort of encouraging you to do whatever it is that you're passionate about in that way. That's pretty cool. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
I'll say I think it's great. I mean, just because they didn't really think about the future in terms of like money, they just saw enjoyment and really put that prioritize that above everything else.
Sure. So the title of the pod, it's never about money, right? So
exactly.
Well, it's about happiness and enjoying what you're doing, and if you can monetize it, which we'll talk about a little later, that's brilliant. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the band itself, the people involved, and the successes that you've had so far.
Well, I joined this band over 3 years ago now. And actually, I got a Facebook notification saying that it was like, here's a photo from your first gig with WAAX or something, and it was a 1 a.m. We played a show at 1 a.m. after a headliner as a secret show because we were flying to New York 2 weeks later, and I didn't want my first show to be in New York, and I was like, oh, that's wild. But anyway, the band's called WAAX, obviously. There's the four of us in it. Lead singer Maz, she's like main songwriter, and I sort of collaborate with her for the writing. The other guitarist is Ewan, or Spew as we call him, and he's you can imagine where that nickname comes from.
I can imagine, absolutely. Yeah,
he's great. He's probably the best guitarist I've ever played with, ever. He's just like a technical freak. I think he came from heavy rock music, so he just was like, it's just riffs and shredding, but he also has the sort of creative know-how to know when not to play and know to play nice and tasteful stuff on top. Really brilliant stuff. And our drummer Tom, he's got a big beard, bald head. He looks really, really, really menacing, but he's just the most beautiful man in the world. And
as they usually are, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's always that kind of like, it's kind of like, he's got like tattoos and a beard, and he's got a bald head, and he kind of looks like serious, and he's just like, it's a cuddly like teddy bear, like he's like, but he started drums really late, like when he was like 17 or 18, which is like really late in terms of music. People usually start like, you start when you're like in primary school or something. Yeah, anyway, so that's the band. We just finished our second album, which is called At Least I'm Free, and it comes out in August, which is exciting.
I've seen a few of the videos as well that you've released. Read Receipts, I believe, and there was the Help Me Hell one that I saw as well, which was cool.
Yeah. We did those two videos. We actually did the Read Receipts, or we don't mind either way people say it, Read Receipts or Read Receipts, but we did that video down in December last year, and it was going to be the first single. It was going to be the first single we released, and for some reason, just discussions within our management and label team and stuff like that, decided to change the order of the singles, and we've been sitting on it for 6 months, and finally got to release it last week. Which was like early June. So yeah, finally it's good. The video is good. I got to do some acting work, and by that I mean sit in a car and smoke cigarettes, and that's it.
Yeah. And I saw that. I've seen that you've had some sort of awards and won some awards in Triple J over time, and so there is some sort of like early success that you've kind of had.
Yeah, well, I think so. The band before I was in it, they won like Triple J on Earth competitions to play festivals and Big Sound and stuff like that, which is like a big music conference in Brisbane. And yeah, they got a lot of love from Triple J. The first album got made like album of the week, so it was getting, all this kind of amazing plaudits. And then, we've tried to continue the success. Like we won the Queensland Music Award for the rock categories this year for our song Most Hated Girl. I don't know. We aim for the stars, We're like, maybe people will love this album. We'll get nominated for an ARIA award, which seems like really out there. But if you aim high, and don't get too disappointed if you don't get it, But you got to aim high. You got to keep on pushing, because that's the reason why we're doing it. Is just to try and make yourself as big as possible, and just, not because of success, but that's part of, every time you write a song, you're like, oh, this is the one that's going to make me internationally famous,
Yeah, absolutely. So that would be a challenge, of course, because you're trying to balance the integrity of doing something that you really, really love with understanding that it's not just you that really, really needs to love it. It's actually the masses to an extent. And the greater that the masses love it, the more successful it is commercially. So that must be a real challenge to kind of work out. Like,
yeah, I think that, I think that's always going to be like the artist's integrity, sort of the dichotomy or whatever. But I think if you prioritize it to like you're making music, or you're making your art, whatever it is, for you, and as number one priority, and then your second priority is like, or your second sort of want is a sort of more global or a larger fan base sort of recognition. As long as they're prioritized in that order, I feel like you can get both, But if you put like stardom or money first, underneath that is like your craft and actually writing songs and your enjoyment factor of it, then that's kind of the wrong way around, I think.
Yeah, that seems to sound right. It's interesting these days. I imagine that you can almost get a following of a specific audience. You don't need to necessarily appeal to everyone, and perhaps you can still be loved by a smaller group and still make it financially successful. I mean, what have you got an idea of how you would want to monetize your passion? Do you guys have an idea about your business plans and how you can monetize the passion? Like, where does the revenue come from?
Yeah, so like at this point in time, the revenue predominantly comes from playing shows. Like that is just it. With streaming services and sort of the advent of this internet age, there isn't really you don't really get much money from sort of actually selling records, which is an absolute bummer, because that's the thing.
Yeah,
The
yes.
record is the physical like thing to represent the hard work that you put in over the years. So
Yeah.
yeah, so playing shows is just is key. So like I guess at this point
Yeah.
in time we're like that is kind of the only way we're making money. And like merch, like people still buy merchandise like t-shirts and stuff like that. And then there might be some random commercial opportunities down the line, like brands that want to work with us. But that brings up the whole sort of interesting thing of like what brands do you work with to not compromise your you know your morals, and sort of like, and also kind of present yourself in a way like I'm a vegetarian, so if like a big fast food chain came to us, I'd probably be like, I don't really want to put my music on your advert, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. So really, what you're looking for is value alignment with what you consider to be the values across the band, I suppose, and then looking to work with those companies that sort of adhere to those things that are important to you guys.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that we have the two sides of the band, and there is the band side and there's the business side, and both are equally important, which is kind of annoying to say, but it's true. Because we want to just focus on the music and the fun part. Well, in my opinion, the fun part. Some people might get a real kick out of business stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but like we have in the business side, we have a band agreement. We have like a mission statement, and it's kind of like something that we've all signed and we've all agreed upon, to sort of like, this is the core values and beliefs of this band, and this is our sort of talking about like the way we act in terms of making sure we're treating everyone fairly and considerately, and things like making sure we're determined and putting enough time and dedication into the band, because we are all directors of the band, and we're all like directors of this business, that so we kind of have to we treat it like a business and treat it like a band at the same time, which I
it's
think is
interesting. It
important.
smells a lot. It smells a lot like business to me. I mean, some of the themes that you're talking about definitely feel that way. And I know we had a conversation offline around the different roles that you have within the business of having a band. And so, could you perhaps talk about how you guys actually allocate decisions across the different various band members? So not only are you actually producing and doing the fun stuff, as you
Yeah.
aptly suggested, but you're also having to do this kind of responsible commercialization sort of side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess like it's like with anything, there's just the reason why we have roles in the band is because there's the public facing persona that everyone sees. That is, we roll up to shows, we smash out these shows. It's really, really fun. It's high octane, and there's like a bit of partying and a bit of having fun. But then that's only like 20% of the time. The rest of the time is rehearsing and making sure we're getting shows ready and all the production stuff, and like dealing with our accountants and lawyers and stuff like that all the time. So yeah, we all have roles. So like Tom, our drummer, is like he's like the business like accounts manager kind of guy. So he's the one who talks to like the accountants, and if there's any queries on the band account, like maybe we've bought some like production equipment but forgot to put in receipt and stuff like that. He's like following up receipts, and he's like making sure he's always in that sort of that side of it, talking to lawyers if we need to sort of like
Yeah.
negotiate contracts for festivals and stuff like that. So that's his role. And then Spew does all the production side, that he makes sure the rehearsal room is ready to go for rehearsals, for recording, if we need to sort of liaise with venues and stuff like that for when we're doing tour. He's that guy. Maz is the general like overall creative director, so she takes all the big scope meetings, like with overseas record labels and with PR people, and she's obviously the face of the band because she's the lead singer as well. So she has all that kind of like frontward facing stuff and the higher sort of big deal stuff. I run like the social media and Facebook adverts, and I also help out with the sort of like with the meetings as well, go on the meetings. So it's like we all sort of have these roles, which are the business roles, and then we also have our own roles, obviously, as the guitarist and the songwriter and all this kind of thing. So it's like we have these two different hats, or lots of different hats that we put on.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, while you're trying to make things work financially, you're not afforded the luxury of just having a team of people outside of it to do all of those things. So you're actually doing it yourselves and allocating it across each other for now, and that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of times, this is the interesting thing. People who have businesses, they sit down, they're working within their business, and they think, "Oh wow, it'd be great to be in a band like that. It's all fun, it's all rock." But there's no responsibility and there's no accountability, which couldn't be further for the truth. If you want to actually be successful in the game, you've just described a lot of hard work and stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people wouldn't know about.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, I think that we do get these amazing times of relief, of the performance and getting to do that, which makes it all really worth it. But there are times, especially during COVID, where we weren't getting any shows because there weren't any shows, but we were still having to manage accounts and things were still going on behind the scenes. But yeah, it's not all fun and games. I mean, it's great because when we're doing all this stuff, like all the business side of it, I guess, that I'm these like three of my best friends in the world, and it's not like we're all in these roles and we're all like stressed. It's a really terrible work environment. It's like, we're just working through it. We're working through it together. We all sort of chip in and help out, and yeah, it's not all rock. It's not all rock, and it's not all fun and games.
Yeah, I mean, I often reflect on my own role within the business. There's certain functions that I just need to do, which I don't find enjoyable. But as a business owner, we sometimes assume things that we just need to assume, and it's not. Of course, if I had my ideal working life, I would just do a particular couple of functions and do them extraordinarily well and enjoy them all the time.
Yeah.
But there's things that you need to do, and that's okay. I think that's okay. I think that hard work and that sort of sacrifice to get that 20% or 30% of that enjoyment and that fun is probably worth it. What do you think?
100%. I mean, you can't. That moment where you're performing, or that moment where you get to do the thing that you really want to do. And I'm sure you probably get in every single role where there is like that 20 or 30% of the thing that you really, really like doing. For me, when playing music and actually getting to perform live, or being in the studio and writing music, you've instantly forgotten about that 80%, that the hard work, the stuff that sort of wasn't exactly what you want to be doing, but you're doing it to get to that 20%. You instantly forget about it, and it's just bliss, to be honest. It's just really good.
It's interesting, like, for me, there are aspects of my business that I have passions about, but I really am passionate about music as well, and so in a way, my business allows me to be, financially independent, or affords me the ability to have some time to do some of the music stuff outside hours. And I make sure that I do that. But the great thing about it is that for me, I get the ability to just do what I love to do without necessarily the worry of the financial side of it. But I also get the frustration that I can't do as much of the music stuff that I'd like to do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the grass looks always greener on the other side, doesn't it? Like, I look at your situation and I think, oh, that would be pretty cool, to be so immersed in the music as you are. And yeah, I wonder sometimes whether you look and think, well, if I was in a more mainstream job and I was doing music on the side, would that have been preferable or not? So it's just an interesting thing. What do you think? There's benefits, and I'm sure there's pros and cons.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. I think the idea that you can sit down at the end of the day working and kind of switch off your business hat. That's an expression. You can kind of take off your
maybe take it off.
Maybe take it off. Maybe switch it off. Unplug it from the wall. And you can sit down and like in front of your computer and tune back into your natural groove mind and write music uninhibited by thinking about growth and almost progression. You know, you're just doing it because for a love of it. That is such a beautiful moment to capture. You know, and I like that, and that's what obviously happens for me. But I do think sometimes when there's like the pressure of writing the next song for the next album, or like or even just being like, oh my god, am I actually going to be able to write something because I need to? You know, that pressure is a little bit scary. So I think that in one sense, you're actually just getting to be a true representation of your creative self when you sit down and you
Yeah,
write music. And do you feel
it's
like do you
interesting. Yeah.
feel that? Like, do you feel
Yeah,
that?
to an extent, it's interesting as you were describing it. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like after hours, I can do that creative stuff, but I also find that I'm quite exhausted after work, and so
Yeah,
all of my juice is out, and so sometimes I'm in zombie state, and I actually can't. I feel like I can't create, and or it's somehow a challenge to create. So, and then I think to
yeah,
myself, oh wow, if I had a little bit more time or energy, then I would be able to do a little bit more on it. So, but having said that, there are times where, and this might just be myself, and I don't know how you feel about this, but there's times where I'm just full of creative energy, and then other times where I'm just really low on juice, and I just simply can't. I don't even want to pick up the guitar at times. So,
yeah.
I don't know if you feel that way or not.
Yeah, I actually, but yeah, I completely know what you mean. I think that being low on juice and like, I mean, creative energy, it's such a strange thing because it's such an intangible thing. Obviously, there's no way of really defining creative energy. It's just like you want to do. But is that
Yeah.
not like I get really creative, like I get really creative and really energized at like 9:30 at night. Like my partner's trying to go to sleep, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, and I
Yeah,
like pick
yeah.
up my electric guitar, and I'm like playing away. She's like, please go to sleep or go downstairs, and I'm like, no. But there's times like you finish work. Like I was working full time in a cafe, and I was rehearsing every night. But because I wasn't sitting down and harnessing creative energy. I felt like it was like work. I was so tired. I would try and sneak in a half an hour nap, and then I'd go to rehearsal every night. And it was like that was rehearsing for a tour, so we weren't doing anything different. We're doing the same thing every night, every night, every night. And I just remember after that month, just being so burnt out and not having any creative energy, not being able to like I didn't want to pick up a guitar because it reminded me of like being tired and like working really really hard. And then like I don't know. I think that you got to find that balance. It's like that whole thing that you like to talk about, the work-life balance thing, of want of a better name, but like a passion, a work passion life balance. A
Passion.
weird like.
I think I often look at it as like passion play. Like
Oh yeah,
you know,
true, absolutely, yeah,
passion, something that has meaning and that you kind of burn to do, even if it has challenges associated with it. And then play being, I just want to I want to, have the inner boy, nourished, that sort of idea.
yeah,
So, but I'm really interested in this idea because what better person than to ask a musician around, how does one get into a creative space because or a space of innovation or because all business owners, they need to come up with ideas for the future and it's in some ways it's no different to really coming up with a new song uninhibited or
yeah.
and so how does one get themselves into a position of being able to do that? How does one make sure that there's a safe space for which we can come up with ideas without judgment and all of that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think it's exactly one of those things where it feels really intangible and really really hard to define. I know that having a really dedicated this is just for music because I can't really speak of anything else, but
Yeah.
having a dedicated space that is that is always the same and consistent, and you're there, and in that room or in that sort of like zone, there is only one purpose, and that one purpose is music, making music, to write, to record or rehearse or whatever. But it's like that. So you're having like your body, like when you enter that zone, it's like this aura washes all over you, and you're like, oh, there's a reason why I'm here. Like I know why I'm here. Another thing is, I guess, is that creating new ideas and being creative is sometimes looked at like a bolt from the blue, like a message from God almost. Whereas if you look at any sort of authors and writers and stuff like that, they kind of talk about how there's routine, and there's like like every morning writing for 3 hours, and eventually your body or your mind is just trained to just be writing and writing and writing, and then it becomes easier and easier and easier. So I think that it's creativity and sort of passion, not passion, because that's just the inner bit, but the creativity is kind of learned over time, and if you allow yourself to be creative, then you're going to be more and more creative, and it snowballs.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love it, because the fallacy is, even in my mind to date, is that creativity is something that is just innate and it just comes out when it comes out. But in effect, it can be learnt, like you suggested, and I have also heard from various people that there is an ability to actually, if you actually create a routine and a habit of getting into that zone, it will become easier and easier. And it's not a bad way to actually create. I often think when I'm trying to, muck around on a guitar, try to come up with a new line or some inspiration, I often feel like I need the whole day.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, yeah. I guess the thing is that sometimes you can do the same. Like you might go like maybe, for example, Tuesday nights. Tuesday nights is when I go into the studio, like, and you sit down, and you might sit down there and you do it every Tuesday or whatever, and you're kind of getting into this lovely routine. And one day you might come up with something in 30 minutes. But one time you might get to the end of it and you've made a jumble of like sounds that were cool individual sounds but didn't really make anything. And then you're like, you weren't any less creative the second day. In fact, you could have been more creative. You just probably, in that sense, you just weren't as structured, or you didn't have a clear vision, but your creativity was still flowing probably. And
so what stops you going? What stops you going to the next day, though, James? I think the judgment that it's not what you wanted. I think part of the creative process is to remove all judgment pre and post the actual.
Yeah.
Is that true? It sounds like it is.
I think that yeah. I think you've got to compartmentalize the sort of the creative process, and the actual sort of like creation and ideation stage needs to be completely uninhibited by sort of outward pressures in any way. And then if you need to, or you want to structure things into a song or into a particular idea, that's when you can kind of move to the next phase, which is kind of a structuring and forming phase. Maybe like there needs to be an uninhibited time where you can like express without being sort of like judged or even be worried about showing it to someone else or anything like that. They just need that kind of like pure time, I reckon.
Let's bring it back, James. I'm going to bring it back to like a concept, right? So in financial planning, as an example, we've got something called compliance, and compliance is about making sure that you adhere to certain standards, that
regulations and stuff.
Yeah, regulations and legal regulations and frameworks. And often when I'm trying to think about business planning ideas, the problem is in part is that there's these constraints that overlay it. And so I found that by coming away from that and trying to remove the idea of compliance and all the rest of it, and just coming up with ideas regardless of what they are, and not judging them to begin with, that is a way of being able to come up with some idea that you can then put the compliance hat on later and work out. So to your point, let's compartmentalize the brainstorming in the creative stage, and keeping that ideation phase really sacrosanct, really, from anything else. And potentially one of the ways to do that is to move out of the space that you operate in when you're always thinking about compliance. So if you're in the office, as an example, if you're wanting to brainstorm, well, go for a walk, go outside, go onto a park bench, do something else where you might actually be able to come up with ideas where that sort of stuff doesn't get, compliance doesn't necessarily come in. And then potentially have a process for routine. So all of these things are, whilst we're talking about it in the context of music, all of these things are super translatable in business context.
Yeah.
For most leaders.
Yeah, because that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. And that's very interesting. Like the idea that like a space would dictate a way of thinking. You know, you're so right. If you're in the office, you're going to be thinking about compliance, and you're going to be thinking about, just that really rigid, structured sort of business thing. But if you go for a walk in the park and the sun is shining and like that, then you're probably gonna, like, I know that's a very cliched line, but you're probably gonna have this much more free and uninhibited view, and just think outside the box around certain issues. I think that's a great point to make.
Yeah. I'm super interested in your new album. It's being released and it's coming out on August 5. At least I'm free. Is that right? Is that what it's called? I'm free.
Absolutely. At least I'm free. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and one of the tracks, I think it's read receipts, depending on how you say it.
Yeah.
It's quite different to your other stuff, because I've kind of noted that your stuff is kind of rock punk sort of. It's hard to label these things, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's sort of what I was thinking. And then when I listened to it, I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. It's very different though to some of the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that was the first song. No, it's not the first song, but that was kind of one of the main songs that Maz and I wrote together. That it came from an acoustic guitar sitting around like almost like campfire sessions, and you can hear it.
I can hear that. Yeah.
Because like if I had a guitar here, I'd just play it, but it's just like a very simple sort of progression with a little melody, and it sounds nice, and it feels like you could. It's like someone's like, "What have you been working on?" and you'd be able to play that song straight away. And I think a lot of the songs on the album, we try to write like that, where we try to like write them just the two of us sitting with one guitar and make it sound really, really like a campfire session, like sharing songs around a campfire, like that kind of thing. There's obviously
and then waxify it later.
Yeah, and then some songs got really waxified, and then they're like angular, dirty guitars and like big drum fills. But this one kind of stayed the same. This one's kind of stayed like there's drums in it, and there's bass, and there's a bit of guitar, and there's lots of backup vocals. But you can strip it, you can boil it down to its purest form, and it's still going to be just as good a song. So that's why I really like this one. That's why I really like Red Receipts.
It's a beautiful song. I think with respect to the creative process, did you start with the intended vision in mind, or does it just come like, do you just go, no vision, I'm just going to do something, and if I like the sound of it, we're just going to go with that?
This song actually started really, really weirdly. Me and Maz were at her ex-boyfriend's house, or boyfriend at the time's house, up on the Sunshine Coast, and there was a kind of disagreement. I'm not going to name any names, obviously, but there's a little disagreement. And then, and I was like there because we were like writing and we were going snorkeling in the morning, and it was a really nice sort of like time we were doing. And then she was like, James, can you come outside with me? Let's go write a song. And I got out there with my guitar. I was like, oh, that sounds good. And then she was like, pretend to play music. I need to tell you something. And she's trying to talk me through their kind of like their fight or whatever. And I was just playing these chords, just like, and I was like, okay. And then I ended up just like stumbling across this chord progression, and she was like, oh, that's really cool, actually. And then we just started like playing, and I recorded it on my phone, and you can hear the progression from like my first chords and her like stumbling around lyrics.
Okay, and then let me. So basically, she was confiding in you, and you were playing the guitar at the same time, and she didn't punch you in the face.
No, it was like she was like, can you play so it looks like we're writing a song? Because there was like big glass, there was glass doors, and and him and his family were inside, and me and Maz were outside writing a song.
But the irony of it was that in doing it in that way, you were able to kind of like almost feel her energy and play whatever it is that you felt was right for what she was saying.
Yeah, whatever happened, it all clicked. It clicked so well, because then basically the lyrics became what she was saying to me. It was great. It was a really great moment. We record everything on like voice memos. So like there's like an hour. I think it took like an hour and 20 minutes to get from the beginning of that to like the song structure with all the right lyrics and stuff like that, which is quite quick, I thought.
This sort of thing in music is super special, and it's hard to capture in business, but I think it's possible in business. It's just doing things that are a little bit different to come up with ideas and innovate and so on. A little bit maybe perceived to be a bit crazy almost out there. But that's how things start.
Absolutely.
And that's amazing. That's amazing.
I think being left to field and doing something slightly differently, people, it could go horribly wrong and doesn't come out or whatever. But, it also could, it drives innovation, and it drives like a new school of thought. If you keep on challenging and breaking down barriers and stuff like that, I think it's very important.
Yeah. How do you define your success, James, as an individual within the band, but also the band itself? Like, do you have an idea of that?
I find that's a really tough question. There's this allegory of this fish who's swimming in a river, and he's trying to make it out to sea, and he's swimming, and he keeps on swimming, and then he swims past another fish, and he goes, "Hey, do you know where the Atlantic Ocean is?" And the guy goes, "Oh, you're already in it." And because he's swimming, he doesn't even realize that he's already reached his destination. I think that the problem with being a musician is that I used to define success as selling out a show, and then you change that to, I used to define success as like, I don't know, like having a song on the radio or something. And now we're doing that, and it's like it's so hard to not keep on changing the benchmark or sort of yardstick for success. I think that's why a lot of us struggle with like mental health as well, is that because we're never quite good enough, and because of our own standards. So I don't know. I'm trying hard to answer that question without doing a roundabout way. But
I think you've answered the question beautifully. I mean, the whole podcast it's never about money, and my thought process behind it was the idea that we build businesses and we accumulate financial for the sake of financial itself and money itself. It didn't seem to be an accurate depiction of what I consider success. And so I really wanted to uncover that with others. And that story that you just explained about the fish, it kind of really says, maybe sometimes we are successful. We don't even realize it. We need to smell the roses a little bit and actually determine that, we are successful in many different ways. And so you may define your success in the fact that you are happy, healthy, and enjoying what you are doing right now, which is, I think, a phenomenal answer.
Yeah, and I think that is true. Like, I think that at the end of the day, I keep on saying to myself that at the end of the day, I would be, if I could be doing this forever, just playing music, hanging out with my friends, enjoying a good run of health, then why would I want anything else, But then, there's societal pressures, and people look at musicians and inherently think, when are they going to give up the dream and go work somewhere? And I was like, maybe I will at some point. That's fine, but for now I'm happy.
That's awesome. So I almost want to end it on this note, but there's just a little bit more that I want to get out, and one of the thing is I really want people to know how to be able to find out more about the band and where, what are you doing? And I know you're doing like a bit of a tour, which is coming up, and I know you're going all over the place, all over Australia. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure some people would love to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are doing a tour with supporting this band called the Amity Affliction in July in Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, and Adelaide, I believe. Which will be lots of fun. It was actually meant to be last year, but it got postponed again. So a year later, we're finally doing the shows.
Awesome.
Which is really great. But then we're also releasing our album on August the 5th, At Least I'm Free. And we'll be doing a tour later on in the year for that. So our own headline one. So I guess the best way to stay updated is to probably follow us on social media. So our Instagram is WAAX Band. Or Facebook, WAAX, yes, WAAX_band. It's yes. The amount of times we get WAXX is wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, go on.
No, it's like every time we play a festival, it's like I know we're not like the biggest band in the world, but you've booked us. You've literally booked us.
Please get our surname right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And last question, because I ask it of everyone: spirit animal. What would your spirit animal be?
I can't believe I didn't prepare for this, even though I knew it was coming.
Yes, and you knew it was coming.
I knew. I think I want to be. I'm just going to be honest. I think I'm like a golden retriever. I think I'm like. I just
don't know what that means.
I think I'm like. I got a lot of energy, and I'm there for everyone. I'm always. I want to be sort of as helpful as possible, but sometimes I get a bit annoying. and
you're playing the guitar in the middle of the night.
Yeah. When I'm working on a sick riff, my partner's like, "What are you doing?" Yeah, I think I have energy and sometimes at the wrong times.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm the same. Look, I really appreciate you getting on. This was a fantastic conversation. We both weren't sure where we were going to go with it beforehand, but we knew we had a conversation before and there was plenty to chat about previously. So
yeah,
excited we've done it, and I think there's a lot of value for everyone in this one. So thanks again, James, for getting on.
Well, thank you for having me, Joe. I really appreciate it.
In my pursuit to learn about whether or not money and the pursuit of money is what defines success, I've had a number of different guests who I've chatted to who've given me an enormous amount of information and insight into that particular question. None better than James Gatling, who is the lead guitarist of successful Australian band WAAX. A musician knows when they first start that financial security is not assured, and yet they do it anyway because they're passionate. They love what they do on a day-to-day basis. And when I asked James, how do you define your success? He suggested to me that it was hard for him to define and that he would give me a long-winded answer. But he eloquently then expressed the fact that he felt he was a success right there and then because he was doing what he loved to do on a daily basis, uninhibited by social, economic pressures that often most people feel. And so I think there's something to be learnt there as business owners, looking at musicians and those who are in the arts, who are often very successful in their own right, but don't always have or have to work very, very hard to get to the financial success that some other businesses and industries often take for granted. So I really hope you enjoy my conversation with James. I think it's important that we look and be diverse in the conversations that we have to learn as much as possible. And in that respect, I think this episode kicks a number of goals. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that this one was enjoyable to listen to and there were some moments of value. If you have resonated in any way with the sentiments of this podcast, we would be delighted to direct you to our website, www.itsneveraboutmoney.com.au, for more free resources and education aimed at improving your capacity to make sound financial decisions for the benefit of your family. We wish you every success, however you define it.